Well, good morning. We are happy that you're here. My name is Chris, and we are excited to jump into this Relationship Reset series as we talk about relationships, and I know it's everyone's favorite topic. I was having a conversation last week with a few people and said, hey, next week we're going to be jumping into this idea of relationships, and there was a whole lot of nervous laughter, which is something you love to see, and so, but we think that you're going to be encouraged, no matter who you are, no matter what season of life you would consider yourself in, whether you're married, you've been married, you're looking to be married, you have friendships, or you just interact with human beings around you. We think that you're going to be encouraged, and there's going to be something for you today and in these next few weeks. Specifically today as we jump into this idea of expectations within our relationships. I know, not even speaking relationally, but I think all of us would say we've had expectations before that have not been met. We were expecting something, got something a little different. Has that ever happened before? I mean, a few of us would probably say yes. All of us would say yes, but you guys can be quiet and not acknowledge that question at all. So we have these expectations that don't get met. This last Christmas, we had a Christmas party, and I decided that I was going to make a dessert. I was going to make, my wife usually makes this amazing cheesecake. It's incredible, and we'll talk a little bit about love languages in a while, and I would say pie is my love language, and cheesecake is my love language. And so, but I decided, you know what, this year I'm going to make a cheesecake, and it's going to be amazing. Everyone's going to, there won't be enough to go around. People are going to be cheering, chanting my name. It's going to be incredible. So I decided one night, hey, I'm going to make it. It was the night before. And so I was, back off. And so I decided I was going to make it, though, and I told my wife, hey, I'm going to make this cheesecake. And so she gave me the instructions. So I started gathering everything, throw it in a bowl, and I turn on the whirly thing. And I started getting it, and she's in the family room, I'm in the kitchen, and she goes, hey, I don't know, you seem pretty far on this, but I didn't hear the whatever the bowl mixer thing is, I didn't hear it go off twice. And I said, why would it go off twice? She goes, I'm a little concerned because you were supposed to whip the cream cheese ahead of time. You're supposed to do that first, do that separately, and then you add in all these other things. And I said, says who? Why would you do that? And she goes, it's literally step one on the instructions I gave you. It says, get the cream cheese, go whip it in the bowl. I'm sticking with that, by the way. And I'm like, I just saw all the things, and it's all going to the same, pie tin. We'll be good. I just put it all in there. She goes, I don't know. I feel like you're supposed to whip that first and follow the instructions. And I go, I think you're wrong. I know, given this one time, I can make a cheesecake. And so I put it all in the bowl, we get it all together. And then my cheesecake, by the end of it, was not looking the way the picture was showing it should look. So I said, you know what, though, I'm proud of this, and I'm going to bring it in, and people are going to love it, and they're still going to chant my name. It's going to be incredible. And so I bring it in, and I started cutting it, and I was seeing all the other desserts, and I'm like, okay, that's not good. And so I started cutting it, and it's falling. It just looks disgusting. It really did. It was, just to get everyone hungry, it was a raspberry cheesecake with this chocolate on top. And when my wife makes it, it's incredible. I decided, you know what, it's my cheesecake. I added peanut butter cups in it, too, because I figured, why not? Don't? Okay. Yeah, I'm not even going to. They go together like peanut butter cups and raspberries. It's awful. And so I thought it was going to be really good. And so I had someone else cut it for me, and a couple of my friends, I think just to support me, had a few bites of it. And I had one friend in particular, and I preface, she has a culinary background, but she takes a bite, and I was like, hey, how is it? And she goes, I go, okay. So please do not spit that out. Just, and she said, it tastes to me like you didn't whip the cream cheese And I go, all right, I'm calling Erica right now. Like, that's not fair. She can't talk about that kind of stuff with you. She goes, why would Erica call me about your cheesecake instructions and your failure to follow the directions? I'm like, okay, back off the attacking here. And she just goes, no, it sounds like you didn't whip the cream cheese ahead of time, and it sounds like you just kind of put it all in a bowl, and then peanut butter cups. And I'm like, yeah, okay. In my head, it was really, really good. And long story short, I went home with like almost all of the cheesecake still. Erica, my wife, would not eat it, and I felt like it was a health hazard to eat it too. It was really soggy and disgusting, and I ate all of it, and I'm not embarrassed by it, proud of it. Felt really good, but it did not go the way that I thought it would. And I don't know if you've ever been in the classic peanut butter cup raspberry cheesecake scenario at the Christmas party, but we've probably all been in situations where we've had expectations and they just didn't land, or something didn't go the way that we thought it would. And when it comes to relationships, this happens all the time. When it comes to relationships, this can be a very, very dangerous game to play with the expectations that we have within them. And so we're going to look a little bit as to how we do reset our expectations and how we can manage that within our relationships, because I think there's a blueprint that we're going to look at for the next few minutes, and that is Jesus before he is, hours before he's arrested and about to go to the cross in the garden with his followers. He tells them this, and you may have heard the golden rule before: treat others the way that you want to be treated. And this is kind of like the level up to that. He says, this is my commandment: love each other the same way I have loved you. Love each other the same way I have loved you. This is something my girls and I, we pray every morning before they go into their school, and we say, hey, God, help us to love people the way that you love us. Help other people to see that kind of love. And so with that filter, with that kind of context in mind, we're going to look at a few things that we do with our hopes, dreams, and desires. And so we have this box over here, and those things that I just mentioned, hopes, dreams, desires, those are not bad things for us to have. Those are actually very natural. And some of us are ingrained with different things that we grew up with. Some of us just have things we've been told to dream, and so we have hopes, we have dreams, we have desires. And so I have this box right here, and so I'm just going to kind of pick a couple things out just to let you know a little bit about my world. So this is a calendar. So we all have kind of hopes, dreams, and desires as to how our calendar goes. And so I know, my calendar looked a whole lot different. The way that I wanted to travel, the things that I wanted to do, the times I went to the gym, they all looked different before I got married, and they definitely looked different before I had children, right? So like my calendar, I have hopes, dreams, and desires of what I want to see on my calendar and what I hope will happen. And just the way that I navigated that before my relationship, before my marriage, before I had children, just looked a little bit different. But we all have our dreams and desires as to how we would like our calendars to go. We also have dreams and desires, I would believe. Take that a step further. I don't know if any of you guys are routine people, but some of us have dreams and desires for daily, like what we're going to do at 7 a.m., what our evening's going to look like. We kind of have a routine. Does anyone have a routine in here that you kind of try to stick to? Or at least at work, that you have a desire for this to happen at work. And so we have things planned out, and we have dreams daily. So not just like long-term dreams, hopes, and desires, but we have daily dreams, hopes, and desires. And some of us in here, maybe, we've always had hopes, dreams, and desires of owning a home or living in a home or getting out of our parents' house or whatever that looks like for you, having roommates. And so we have these desires to do something. And so we have this over here. Some of us have hopes, dreams, and desires of children. And so I just actually found this so I apologize if it's somebody's here and it's your child's favorite baby doll, but so we have hopes, dreams, and desires that maybe one day we will have kids, or one day, we're going to have a big family, right? This is going to be multiplied by 4 or 5 or 6. So we have these desires, we have these dreams, and those, again, are not bad hopes or dreams or desires. Some of us do this. We have desires for that one car, that one day we're going to get that car. Or maybe even more close to the vest, we have that car that we will never let go of, no matter who says what, we are not. And you might be going, I can't believe he still has that car. I can't believe she still wants that car, whatever it is. But we have desires, and they're not bad things. They're not bad hopes, not bad dreams to have. We also have desires or something ingrained in us as to how cleaning happens. So whether that's within a marriage or whether that's, your coworkers around. I've had coworkers before that sanitize everything every time they get up, and I just didn't understand it. But we all have desires as to how this goes. And I tell you a quick story. When Eric and I first got married, we were living in an apartment, and I had managed my poor parents, amazing parents. And it wasn't because they didn't teach me how, it wasn't because they didn't tell me to do it, but I had somehow, when I got married, had never managed to clean a bathroom in my entire. You guys are so judgmental towards me. I hear the sighs, the audible, shame on you. Well, yeah, so I was smart. I felt like it was wisdom in how I went about it. So either way, no, I was disobedient. But Erica asked me one day when we got married, she was cleaning the bathroom, and she was like, using all these products that I had never seen before, never used before. And I'm like, it is taking you a long time to do this. I don't know what you are doing. And so one day we're going to have someone over our apartment. And so she goes, hey, I'm at school. She was in college. And so she said, hey, I need you to clean the bathroom for me before they come over. I'm like, I'm on it. I got this. And so this is how I clean the bathroom. I didn't know what to do. There's a bunch of things in the cabinet that I had no idea what they were for, where they went, and what surfaces they used. So I rolled out some toilet paper, and I got it wet, and I just kind of wiped everything down. So she comes home. She's like, what did you do? And I'm like, you're welcome. I cleaned the bathroom for you. There's toilet paper on the mirror, little pieces of it. She's like, what is this? And I go, well, I got it wet, obviously, to wipe the mirror. And she goes, that is not okay. So we have these hopes, dreams, and desires, and we're not even gonna touch what we hope or dream or desire about money or maybe even when it comes to conflict, because maybe we grew up in a home that didn't handle conflict well, or maybe we grew up in a home that didn't handle conflict at all. We have these dreams or hopes or desires of what that's gonna look like, whether it be in a friendship later on, a best friend, or maybe in a marriage later on. We have all that, and those again are not bad things. These are not bad things. They're natural for us to have. Here's where it turns, and this is where we tend to struggle within our relationships, is we put all of those hopes, dreams, and desires into a box, and we turn them into our expectations. And then we take our expectations in this box, and we go walk around looking for, can you carry this for me? Are you going to fulfill all these things in here? This is my calendar, and I expect you to, follow that. I have all these things in here, and I want a family one day, so can you do that for me? And all of this. And so we have this, and this is where things get a little rough when it comes to the expectations we have in our relationships. Because again, it's not bad. It's not bad to have hopes, dreams, and desires. It turns negative when we take them all, put them in a box, and say, here's what I'm expecting you to fulfill for me. That's where it gets a little dangerous, because my expectations can make or break my relationships. They really can. My expectations can make or break my relationships. And so with this filter, this is my commandment. Love each other same way I have loved you. We're going to use this passage in Ephesians chapter 5 to walk through. And if you're not married, you have no desire to be married whatsoever, I think there's so much that can be taken out of this. But if you're familiar with it, it is a passage on marriage. And for years I've been officiating weddings, and I love being able to read these verses. I love talking through these verses at weddings. These are very, very inspiring for me. And I think sometimes we've heard some of them before, and maybe we misheard them or we misunderstood them. And so I want to jump in to Ephesians chapter 5, and it starts out with this: submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. We're going to come back to that. We'll fly over that for a minute. We're going to come back to that. We're going to jump into this. Maybe you're more familiar with this. Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. And maybe you read that and go, it's 2019. You sure about this? I don't know. Or maybe you're not a church person. Maybe you came to church for the very first time today, or maybe you're watching this or you're listening and you're just like, you know what, I'm not sure about this. And I've heard, the jokes about this verse, which aren't funny. And I just have a hard time with this. But culturally speaking, when Paul was writing this was not a bizarre concept. This was not like a, really? What? Submit to my, like this was what happened. This is what in culture at this time, it was not uncommon for women just to be property, for wives to be property. And so when wives are hearing this, when women are hearing this, they're going, yeah, that's what. So in this time, that's what it was. It's not that part that's shocking back then. It's this part that comes next. That is, all of this plays into who we are today too. But this would be the part that is shocking at the time that this is being written. It says, now husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In this same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. This kind of love is not like a, hey, I love you. This kind of love that is being commanded here is just as Jesus demonstrated. Hold on. Because just a little while ago, Jesus demonstrated the fact that he laid his life down and died on the cross. That kind of sacrifice. He lived a servanthood kind of life. That is what I'm supposed to model now because, again, culturally, it wasn't uncommon for men to have property and, how should I put this, multiple property, to not be just tied down to one wife. It was just culturally. So they're going, wait a minute. You're saying, yeah, okay, yeah, women submit to, but you're saying I love my wife like I love myself, like, and I love my wife. I show love the same way Jesus showed love. That's my model. And so I love this, going back to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. It points back to Jesus, what God has done for us. This idea that marriage is kind of this picture, when lived out this way, is a picture of the church, that Jesus laid down his life to forgive us, to make us new. And out of that response comes the church saying, I'm willing to give everything that I have. I'm willing to give my life and follow you. That is what this looks like here. And so we see this oftentimes and we go, I don't know about that. But what this is saying is submit to one another. And I've heard a pastor author say it this way. It becomes, if we're going to compete about anything within marriage, we're going to make this a submission competition. We're going to learn to love through this filter of what Jesus said, my commandment, to love each other the same way I have loved you. I'm going to learn how to submit to one another out of what Jesus did for me. So this is kind of a mutual coming together. And so biblically it does say that, hey, a man is the head of the house, but is a man stepping up and loving the same way Jesus did? And so that is, oh my goodness, when we talk about this at weddings, I just love talking about this because this is two people coming together. And you might say, you know what? I am not married. I have no desire to be married. What does that filter look like in your context? What would it look like to have a submission competition? What would it look like to love in that kind of way with a coworker, with a friend? What would it look like in your context with that filter? What would this be like? Because again, I love this. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. So this submission competition, we got to figure out, where do we start? How do we do this? What does this look like? Because I have so often hopes, dreams, and desires that I turn into expectations that I give to people. So what do I got to do here? What is my next step? And so I would say our next step would be, if we're going to try to live this out, we're going to try to love the way Jesus loved us, is we start with us. We start evaluating ourselves. We start evaluating ourselves. So it says, first get rid of the log in your own eye, then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. Now, I'm not saying your friend may not have a log in their eye. That may be very true. But how often do we forget or look over the things that we have going on and we just go, yep, they didn't meet me there. They didn't, nope, Nope, they didn't meet me there. The older and older I get, the more I struggle watching. I love watching football. I love watching hockey. I struggle with college football just because the analysts and everything critiquing and yelling at like the 18-year-olds that are playing football. I'm just kind of like, well, this is kind of bizarre, and it's a game, okay. But I love getting into it just as much as anyone else. And I have those moments where I am on the couch shoving my face with chips, going, "Are you kidding me? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?" Kid who's more athletic than I will ever be, getting a full ride to school. Cool. Yeah, what are you doing? Where I'm eating, soggy peanut butter and raspberry cheesecake and going, that I failed miserably at, going, if I was the head coach, the Wings would be in the playoff hunt. Like, get out of here. Like, what are they doing? This offensive coordinator, it's a joke. It's a joke. I could do better than that. And we're so good. And I'm not saying this to ruffle any feathers, because I do this too. It's fun to get into sports like that. But we're really good at this relationally too, where we're good at calling out shots from the sideline, calling out shots from the couch. And we start going, yeah, no, they didn't nail it there, while we're shoving our face with something. Oh, yeah, they didn't meet my expectation here. And so, yeah, no, they're done. So we start with this evaluating ourselves. We start with thinking, okay, I know, because I'm imperfect too, that I don't have, there are areas in my life that I could be working on as well. There are areas where I want to kind of evaluate and go, am I doing this? Am I throwing some of my expectations on people too much? Am I missing the mark in other areas? So we start evaluating ourselves. And as we do that, these verses in Romans chapter 8, they say, those who are dominated by the sinful nature think about sinful things, but those who are controlled by the Holy Spirit think about things that please the Spirit. So letting your sinful nature control your mind leads to death, but letting the Spirit control your mind leads to life and peace. And so think about that. Letting the sinful nature control our mind starts leading to death. Maybe the death of a relationship, maybe the death of a hopeful thought, maybe whatever it is. But when we start evaluating ourselves, we got to start thinking through, what are the things that enter my mind? What are the things that maybe I'm entertaining too much? I'm good at calling out what other people are messing up. But then, do I dig deeper with it? Do I go, I can't believe they missed the mark over here, and I can't believe they have that kind of attitude. They don't respect me, and we start feeding into that. We start really going, and when we feed it, what happens when we feed it? It tends to grow. And so when we let that control our thoughts, when we let that control our minds, it can be very dangerous with our relationships, with our marriages or friends or coworkers or whatever, because we can start thinking and plotting or whatever it is. But it says when we follow the Spirit, that's when it leads to life and peace. And I don't know anyone who would say, no, I'd rather be completely bitter my entire life instead of having peace. And so what we feed tends to grow. And I know this because, I have this, I'm very passionate about certain things. And one of them is my hatred of squirrels. And so I'll let you know about this. You're passionate about squirrels? I heard audible groans again. My goodness, calm down. I had an opportunity to officiate a wedding, friends of ours, and groom's family is all from Australia, and they were just fascinated by squirrels. Just fascinated, like really out of all things, the squirrels, like be in conversation, they see a squirrel and they're like, look at that creature. It's a squirrel, but either way. And so, but we have, in my neighborhood, there's squirrels everywhere. They come right up to the window. They tap on the glass. I'm not even kidding. It is so frustrating. So frustrating. To the point where I've gone outside before and have physically thrown things at the squirrels to get them out of the yard. To where I've seen my daughter, when she was about 3 or 4, she's outside picking up sticks and throwing them and throwing rocks at the fence. And I'm like, Evie, what are you doing? Getting rid of the squirrels, Daddy. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yep, this isn't good. But in my defense, our neighbors for a while, a couple houses down, decided they had compassion for the squirrels, and it was starting to get cold in the fall. And so they were leaving out pies in their backyard for the squirrels. Which, again, I already told you, pie is a thing for me, and so what a waste of pie for such a, okay. But so the squirrels would know they could come all the time to this house. They could come in our neighborhood all the time because they would be fed. They would have delicious pie and so they would come, they would be fed, and they would know that this is just a place where they can hang out, a place where they can go. And so many of us, that's kind of our mind when it comes to these negative thoughts, or when it comes to these expectations that we put on other people, is these negative thoughts know they have a spot. They know they can come back, and they know that we're going to entertain them and feed them for a while. And so they just keep coming back. And so we got to learn, how do we actually live by the Spirit? How do we actually have some peace in that and learn how to filter that out and not entertain the things that are just going to cause us harm, cause us bitterness in relationships? And so our thought life is really big. And so we evaluate ourselves by looking first and foremost, hey, I got work to do on my part. Now, what's in my mind that I'm even building more negativity towards? And as we do those things, I love this verse in Galatians. It says, for you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters, but don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. Because of what God has done for us, we now have, when that peace, when that life, when that fulfillment is in our heart, we now have the capacity to learn how to serve one another. And so it starts with a heart thing. So often we start with trying to fix our actions, and hopefully our mind, we get some willpower and we're going to make it right. And then maybe that will get to our heart. And this kind of flips the paradigm as we evaluate ourselves and say, hey, well, what's going on here that can help transform me here, that will then overflow into what I'm doing, what I'm saying, how I'm interacting with the people that are around me. And so we start evaluating ourselves so that we get to a point where we're elevating others. Philippians chapter 2, when it talks about having the mind of Christ, it starts out by saying, hey, don't be selfish, which so many of our natural tendencies just kind of lean towards selfishness. It says, don't be selfish. I mean, if all of us think back, where does that get us? Maybe at times, professionally it's gotten us somewhere, but personally it ended up being a train wreck in different areas. What does selfishness really get us, and how are we doing with that? It says, don't be selfish, don't try to impress others, but be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. When we start evaluating ourselves, we get to a point where we start going, I don't have it all together either. Now I can get to a point where I start elevating other people, saying, I don't have it all together. Let me see how I can start thinking of you too, recognizing that you don't have it all together either. And it says, don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. You must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. One of the best ways, one of the most practical ways, I think, and it works in all kind of relationships, whether it be friendship, again, dating, marriage, one of the best ways to look out for other people's interests is to discover more and more about who they are. Discover, we're really big into the Myers-Briggs test, the personality test, but one of the things that really is been so helpful, and I'm learning so much, even coming into 9 years of marriage, and I will continually be learning this, but the 5 love languages. And maybe you're familiar with them, maybe you've heard of them before. You can Google it, it's a great book, but it talks about different ways that we receive love, different ways that we give love. And so there's words of affirmation, there's quality time, there's acts of service, there's gifts, and there's personal touch. And that is not just an intimate thing, but that could be something as much as a hug. And that was something for me that I realized, there's been days where I did not, I've come home, we get in the grind, and we got kids, and they're screaming and yelling or whatever. And there had been a day where I didn't hug my wife. And I'm going, I need to work on that, because that's one of the ways that she receives love really well. Now we all receive love, probably in all of these things, but we gravitate maybe towards one or two of those a little bit more so. And so it's a great tool to maybe help you understand how you receive love, but then also your friends, other people around you, how they receive love. And sometimes you can tell right away, but sometimes taking a test like this or a little quiz like that helps too. But within gifts, there's this idea that this is not like a bad thing or a selfish thing, but you just feel valued. Maybe it's something you grew up in, and someone showed value in you by getting you a gift. And that is not a bad thing. And it's not necessarily to you. It's not about the quality or the price of the gift, but it's just the fact that someone was thinking about you. They gave you a gift that lights you up. And those people tend to be great gift givers too, because that's their love. That's how they tend to see things. They want to show value, and so they give gifts. Acts of service might be something like, maybe your favorite phrase in the world is when you're thinking about all the things that you have to do, and someone jumps in and says, you know what, I'll do that for you. And you're like, oh, marry me right now. Like, what is this? You're going to do that for, like, how nice, or I've already done that for you. And you're like, whew, maybe that's just someone helping you out in that way. Someone doing that, maybe acts as and you find a lot of joy in doing that for other people. You like to take care of other people. You like to, one of the things for Erica, my wife, we buy, I forget how often, but we buy like a lot of chicken, and then we end up cutting it up and putting it in the freezer. That's just how we do it. And so she despises cutting up that chicken because she's like, it's so gross, so gross, so gross. And it is, I don't mind it, but it's one of those things that I do it, and it is like the heavens have opened up, and she's like, thank you so much for doing that for me. That is just a great way to show love. And I'm like, really? Okay, yeah. So some of you might be acts of service. Some of you may be quality time. This is what Erica is. This is her number one love language, so I'm learning this. We'll continue to learn this. But for me, the longest time, I thought quality time was just, we're both home together. Like, doesn't that, like, I'm home. Like, doesn't that count? She's like, not exactly. She doesn't really enjoy, if we're in a group, that's fine, but the two of us, if we have one-on-one time, she doesn't like going to see a movie, because she's like, I don't want to look at a screen for a couple hours, I want to talk, and I'm learning that over time, that it's not enough just to be home, but it's the way she feels valued and loved is me having a conversation with her, asking her about her day. That is quality time, and that's something, again, that I'm learning. Again, physical touch could be hugs, anything like that, and how often we go as men, we don't think about it maybe as much as other people do, but we forget like how meaningful that could be, just to give someone a hug. And then there's words of affirmation, which is what I gravitate towards. That's kind of my love language, and so when someone says something nice, it's like, wow, that shows value to me, because you've heard like sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will only amplify all of my insecurities and leave me emotionally paralyzed. And true story. And so, but that was, and for me, I would always, because that's how I receive love. Early on in our marriage, I would tell Erica that I loved her. I would say something nice to her. But the way she received love best is quality time. And so she would want to, hey, why don't you show me that by spending quality time? And it's not a bad thing. It's every marriage or every relationship has something like that. And so we talk it through and we figure that out, and we're learning as we go. But that's a great tool to maybe help us understand how we can look out for other people's interests. Because once we learn a little bit more about who our friends are or who our spouse is, we then can begin to look out for different ways that we can show that kind of love, show that appreciation. That is how we elevate others, that we spend in time learning about them. And so we're going to look here. These aren't incredibly profound, but they're deeply personal, how to reset our mindset. And the first thing that I would say, and I'll say this too, I think these things here are what take friendships to make them feel like friends become family. And I think these here take marriages from a point to where, yeah, we tied the knot at one point, but this is a continual pursuit to tighten the knot, to grow closer and closer together. These things are incredibly important. And the first thing would be complete commitment to the person. Complete commitment to the person. I'm going to bring these back up here. And what we do is we start recognizing that the person, our friend, our spouse, or whatever, they have a box. They have hopes, dreams, and desires. And so this first part is we are committed to this person and who they are. We don't know what it took for them to get to here with all these hopes, dreams, and desires, but we recognize the fact that they do have a box, that they do have hopes, dreams, and desires. And the next one that we do is we do careful construction on the relationship. So we're completely committed to the person. We have careful construction on the relationship. And this is where it gets a little tricky, because oftentimes we go, you know what, we try to do construction on the person instead of just completely committing to them, maybe showing our love and submission. We go, I'm just going to fix them. I'm just going to fix her. But this construction comes with understanding, okay, they have a box. Now what's in their box? What's in my box? How did it get there? What are some of the things that they're passionate about? What are some of the things that they care about? What are their hopes, dreams, and desires, and why? Why are they there? And so we do construction on the relationship, starting to understand a little bit more. We don't fight to win, we fight to understand. And so we start looking into some of that. And then lastly, we use clear communication. And this is where we communicate our hopes, dreams, and desires. I've heard it said this way: we start painting the bullseye and marking the landmines, right? Like so often we have so many just unspoken rules or unspoken expectations. And we go, you didn't get it again. And we only communicate our frustration instead of going, hey, it actually hurt when you did that or when you said that. Hey, actually, I felt great when, you told me you liked me and you gave me a pie. Like, that was amazing for me. And so I'm going to let you know that's how you win in my relationship here. And so, but it's so important because we start recognizing that other people, we're completely committed to them as a person, recognizing they have a box. Then we start figuring out what's in their box, why is it in their box. And then in this part where we communicate what's in our box, why it's in our box, we start taking these things out and we start putting them on the table so that we can share a box, so we can start working on this, so we can start coming together and going, it is wrong of me to put these expectations on you and tell you to carry this around. It's important for me for you to know that I love you, that I'm committed to growing. I want this construction. I want this to start with me. I want to lead in that. And then I want to know how we can support each other, how we can go with this together by communicating clearly what our hopes, dreams, and desires are so we can come together on this. And so I hope that you don't leave here going, you know what, yeah, I got to do a couple of things and I'll get it right in my head. Our verse today, this filter of love, Jesus tells us his commandment is to love each other the same way I have loved you, the same way Jesus has loved us. And so we don't love out of a place of guilt. We don't love out of a place of shame. We love out of an overflowing amount of love that Jesus came and lived a perfect life, paid our penalty, our price for all of our sins, our mistakes that we've made, knowing that we're imperfect. He took all of that so that we could be made new, so that we could have joy. And then out of that, in our heart, comes God transforming the way that we think. And then out of all of that overflow comes the necessary actions and the right words to say within our relationships. If we flip that around and we get that backwards, we end up frustrated. And we end up maybe in a bad spot or really needing help. And so I want to encourage you, maybe today you would start with recognizing who God is, what he did for you, and allow that to come into your heart. Allow that to change maybe your mindset, and then allow that to overflow into who you are and how you interact with the people around you. Let's pray together. God, we thank you so much for your love. Thank you so much for what you've done for us. The fact that you are completely committed to who we are in our box and everything in it. God, that you offer opportunities for us to grow. And God, that you've clearly told us that when we choose to follow you, when we receive your love, that we are your child, that we are in heaven forever. And God, help us to have that within our heart, for that to be what flows out of us. God, help us to evaluate ourselves this week. Help us to elevate others. We're so thankful for your love. And maybe you're in the room today and you would say, I've never had a moment. I don't know about this joy within my heart. I just kind of hope that heaven was a place that I could go to one day if I got enough of this right. That is not the case. That is not the case. There's not enough good things we could do to earn it. And Jesus says, whoever calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. And so maybe if you're ready today to take that next step, that you would say, I want to ask Jesus into my heart. I want to know this joy and this fulfillment, and I want this life to overflow out of my heart. And I want to know that I'm in heaven one day forever. Maybe you would pray a prayer like this. You can repeat after me quietly in your own heart. Jesus, I know I'm a sinner. I know I've made mistakes. I am not perfect. But I believe that, Jesus, you lived a perfect life. You died on the cross to take all of my punishment for the mistakes that I've made. And that, God, you raised Jesus from the dead 3 days later to show you are more powerful than anyone or anything, and you have the power to forgive. You have the power that when you say you give life and joy and there's a place for us in heaven, I really do believe that you have that authority to do so. So God, come into my heart. Help make me new. Help me to follow you. Guide me every step of the way. Help me to be reassured that I am your son, that I am your daughter, that I will be in heaven with you one day. And that out of this, your love would shine through me within all of my relationships. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.